Okay, so welcome everyone to the Colored Pencil Message in a Bottle. Again, my name is Anita Thompson, and I teach art for libraries and a few other places as well. It's my pleasure to be here this evening with you. We're going to start off with drawing this message in a bottle in pencil, and then we'll be going over everything in colored pencil. So I'm using a 7 by 10-inch paper. I have it in landscape mode since our bottle is kind of tilting. And I'm gonna just fix my camera one more time just to go a little bit closer so you can all see. There's the original. And we're going to get started. So you want to make sure that you are drawing lightly. I always draw darker so that you can see it on Zoom. So by lightly, what I mean is that you should be able to see your lines, but barely, because we are going to be going over this in colored pencil. And we want the colored pencil to outshine the pencil. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start here towards the bottom of our paper. Also, if there's any questions, you can put those in the chat. You can also unmute if you like. You can ask any questions. Sorry for my camera again. I just wanted to fix this a little bit. Okay. All right, so coming down here on the paper, we're not going to go all the way to the bottom, obviously. We're going to go a little bit above. And I'm just going to move this, move this one more time. Sorry about that. There we go. That's the angle I was looking for. I just had my gooseneck a little bit too close. You can hear it straining. Okay, so we're going to come down here, and for now, we're going to create the bottom of the bottle. And so you want to make sure that you have enough room going upward that you're able to fit in the whole bottle. So we're coming down here at the bottom, and we're going to create an oval, sort of an oval shape. It's the bottom of the bottle, so basically it's more like a rounded rectangle. And obviously this whole part will not be showing completely because we're going to be adding sand. Oh, let me let Kathy in. But for now, we're going to create that shape. I'm just recopying the information in the chat. Welcome, Kathy. Oh, she left. Okay. Well, maybe she'll pop back on. Okay, so now from here, what we're going to do is we're going to create the shape of the bottle. So remember, this is the bottom of the bottle. And so we're going to come around here and we're going to curve. Our line will straighten out slightly, and then we're going to curve again for the top portion of the bottle. Now we're making the mouth, or I should say the neck, they call it the neck of the bottle. And you want to make sure that that neck is in the middle towards the bottom of your bottle. So you may have to fix your bottle a little bit. I definitely have to fix mine. I'm a little bit crooked here. So I'm making my bottle just a little bit slightly down. Oh, good, Kathy, you were able to jump on. Very good. So we're just starting off with our pencil. Now we did the first side here, and we're going to now do the second side. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that both sides are even. So if you have one side, like right here, see, I'm making this a little bit too small, and I made the neck of the bottle a little too thin. So I'm straightening that out, and I can see that now as I've drawn the entire thing on both sides. The bottle does curve as it gets into the, what's considered the neck area up here, the thinner part. And then we're going to draw the top part of it, and that's going to start off with a downward curve. And that's because of the way the bottle is made and the angle that we are seeing it. So your circles or your curves should be sort of like a frown, right? So this is kind of frowny like. If I were to compare it to which way you would want your curving to be, it's not upward, it's downward. Okay, so that's the top of the bottle. You also want to make sure that these two lines sort of line up. I'm fixing mine now. Here we go. And when you're ready, you're going to also draw the shape of the cork. And the cork also has curves to it. And I will make sure to take a little break so that you can all catch up just in case I'm going too fast. So we make a cylinder at the bottom of the cork. And then as you can see, the cork gets wider as it goes upward. And you want to make sure that it is sort of see-through. I'm going to make my cork just a little bit bigger at the bottom here, a little bit wider. I made it a little bit too small, and I want it to be a little wider. And so that cylinder at the bottom of your cork would be a flattened oval. Again, because of the angle. And now we're going to draw the rolled up piece of paper inside, but I'll give everybody a minute to double check your angles. Obviously, we are just drawing the basics and not quite the details yet. We'll go back and do that more with our colored pencils. But for now, we want to get the basics in, meaning the basic shape of the bottle. We're going to add in the rolled up message. And how we're going to do that is we're looking at the overall shape of that message. And so it's elongated, and it really is another, it's sort of, we've got ovals and more of a cylinder, kind of like a paper towel holder, except it flares out at the top and the bottom. So let's do that. So we're going to go inside the bottle, and we're going to be making basically on the left side the basic shape. we're going to extend it toward the bottom of our bottle here. Fix that. So it's not quite going to touch the bottom of the bottle. So this is just our basic shape. And we're going to be adding some layers on. So we haven't drawn the top part that's rolled up inside. So you want to make sure that you have room for that as well. We're going to be erasing and adding on to this shape. This shape here at the top is this shape up here. So again, we haven't drawn this piece of paper that's sticking out yet. So we're going to do that. So coming here up top, we make this side a bit pointed. The paper settles a bit. And then it's a little pointy over here. Now we're going to start making some things wrapped around this. Before we do that, we're going to come down to the bottom of the paper and we're going to make this ripped part right here. And so what we do is we come on this side and we come up from the bottom that we've drawn and we're going to make what kind of looks like a crinkled and ripped piece of paper. I'm going to make mine just a little bit wider here.
Which one is that on the drawing? Is that the second one up?
Oh, this one here?
Yes.
Yep. So it's at the bottom here. Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yep. So right here. And then from that, we can make the second one. So remember, you know, you can draw on top of and alongside this shape that we've created because we'll be erasing and making sure that we have the total shape that we want. So that's why I always mention drawing lightly because we tend to erase and add on and basically change the basic shape. Okay, so now we're getting into the bottom part. So we've done this first crinkle. We've done the second, but the second one has a piece that goes like this because it's being wrapped around. So on both sides, we create that, and then we have a smaller rolled up section because as you start rolling something, you know, it's usually tighter at first, and then it gets bigger. So that is that tightened version of the first roll of the paper. And as you're drawing, you can erase and do some adjusting as you see fit. like, see, we drew over on top of our basic shape. So there might just have to be some sections that have to be a little bit erased. And we're now going to add the part up here, the string, and the string up above. So basically, we make a curved line and we make it go a little bit extended over, just a little bit on the side here, on the left side. And that's going to make it look three-dimensional, right? That's going to make it look like that it is actually a piece of string that is wrapped around. And we're going to do the same with the other two, except this one, we extend to the left like this, right? And each side gets bent because it's wrapped around the other side. So again, the angle you would see the string doing that. And then there's one more that kind of crisscrosses on top a little bit. But again, you would see a little bit on the left, and that goes around. Oh, Robin. Welcome, Robin. We started around 6:30, but this is being recorded, so whatever you've missed, you will be able to go back and see. But we've started drawing our bottle. We're going to be doing some finishing touches as far as the drawing part is concerned in a few minutes. But we've basically drawn the bottle first, and then the cork. And we've just completed most of the message, the paper that's inside. So as far as this paper is concerned on this area, we want to make sure that there are parts of the paper that are kind of lifted up a little bit, like right here, because it would get a little bit lifted up as it's curling around. Especially as the string is there. There is another piece of string that is hanging right on this side. You can see it faintly. So I'm going to draw that in. And then what we're going to do is draw the shell that's happening here. And it is towards the bottom of the bottle, but not all the way at the bottom. So about right here. And basically, it kind of starts off where you can see a little bit of it on the right side. And it's kind of shaped like this. So this is the general shape of most of the shell. And then we're going to be wrapping around, making lines like this. To make it curved. So again, that shape is kind of like this. Oops. I'm just repeating the shape. You don't have to draw this if you've already drawn it up here, but I kind of want you to see that it's kind of a longer shape. We add the lines, we leave room for the bottom piece of the shell, and then we're going to create the top part of that shell. I made it a little bit down. Let me do it up here. So basically, it's a cylinder, almost very similar to a toothpaste cap. And then you can make the sides kind of balloon out just like a shell, one of those shells that have a lot of different angles. But what you want to make sure is that the bottle line is coming through the shell. And right now it looks strange because we haven't drawn the sand yet. But that's coming next. So I'll give everybody a chance to catch up. And our final drawing portion of this will be the sand, and then we're going to get into the colored pencil, which is my favorite part, and hopefully yours too. I mean, I love the drawing as well, but it's really fun to get in there with the colored pencils. Okay, so here again, you want to make sure you're drawing lightly. So we're now going to draw in the sand where the bottle is sort of parked in the sand. And so just like up here, I'm going to show this up close. So as you can see, the sand, is indented. It's indented with the bottle that is leaning upward. And you can see most of the bottom of the bottle except around this part. So we're now going to draw in some sand in this section. So join me as we do that. And I'm going to go up close more now that we are mostly finished with the drawing portion of it. So we're going to draw in the sand. So we're going to start here. And don't be afraid to have your sand go into, near where your bottle is, because that's what it's doing. Then we have a bump here in the sand. And that means you're going to erase the part of the bottle that you drew and have the line of sand be showing. So now it looks like your bottle is sunk into the sand right here. And so we're just going to make a few curvy lines to indicate bumpiness. And any lines that you create, you want them to be showing through the bottle because your bottle is transparent. So we have one back here, and we make, the other portion of the sand, again, kind of come through the bottle, a little bit here, and then we start to make some other lines that we're going to go back in and shade. So these are the lines so far. And then we're going to create some that are underneath the shell, since the shell is also sitting in the sand. But I'll give everybody a chance to catch up. Okay, so the final lines in the sand are going to come from underneath the shell, kind of like this. And then I've got one more here that's kind of coming out like so. Now the last part that we are drawing is the bottom portion of the bottle, which is sort of the, literally the bottom part. So there's an outer or an inner curve actually, and then some lines from the bottom of the glass. Now this is where you may want to lighten up your drawing because we are about to get into the colored pencil. We are going to start off with the sand, which at first we're going to be using our brown colored pencil. But what we want to do is we are going to make it not so dark that we're outlining. Okay, we outline the bottle, but that's about it. Every other line is going to be lighter. So we're going to take our brown and we're going to start retracing all of our pencil lines that are supposed to be in the sand. But again, this is just light. So let's start off here. And then once you retrace them, what you might want to do is go back and just do a little bit of erasing so that the pencil will actually come up. So we're just retracing all of the lines that we created for the sand, and we're just going over those with our brown colored pencil. So just the sand right now. So that's this major line here in the back, this line here, this line, three lines underneath the shell. You have a line here, bottom left of the bottle, excuse me. And then you have one more really curvy kind of line here that curves downward and then it goes off a little bit toward the shell. Now, what I also forgot that we have to add is this little part here that sort of is shaded because it's going to become a bit of a sort of like a hill, a little bit of a sand hill. And we'll go back in now and we're going to start creating shading. But before we do that, as I mentioned, you might want to take your eraser and just lighten up on all of those lines, and you'll see that your pencil should be coming off, and what's left is your colored pencil. Now you may have to, add a little bit of redrawing there, but it's okay because we're going to now get into the shading, so we don't want those lines to be too dark. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the side of our pencil and we're going to shade the sand. We're not shading right now on top of the paper. We're shading around it. So we're shading inside the bottle, but again, not on the paper yet. So we'll shade a layer of brown, a very light shading, except for certain parts where I will let you know, shade a little darker, where it's sunken in to the sand and there would be a darker shadow, that sort of thing. Okay, so join me as we do that. So again, we're going to start over here on the left, and I'm just very lightly going to shade in the sand. Because then what we do is we go on top of all of this with our yellow. So again, we're just shading very lightly the brown, but we're not going on top of the paper for right now. That's going to be separate. We are just shading inside the bottle. And obviously the sand surrounding the bottle. So you can see how light I'm shading. It's just really a very incredibly light application right now. It will get darker in other spots, but for now, this is the first application. Remember to shade around the rolled up paper inside for now. You're also shading around the shell here. And again, this is just a very light application of shading. Now, when you're ready, you're going to pick up your golden yellow. And your golden yellow, you're now going to shade on top of the brown. So here again, a bit of a lighter application, but a little bit darker than the brown, because we want our sand, right, to be showing a bit more. So this is the second application. This is yellow, the golden yellow. So where you just added the brown, you're now adding the yellow on top of everything. And it doesn't look like much so far because we're just adding 2 layers and they don't have any real, they don't have any real depth yet. We're just kind of adding flat application of color for both. And I kind of like the color to fade out all around. So in order to do that, you just go really light as you're getting around toward the end of the coloring. So again, first the application of a light application of the brown, and then a light application of the yellow. And now we're going to go back in with the yellow. And first, we're also going to come up to the paper, and we're going to color that yellow. So basically what we're going to do is on the left side of the paper, we're going to color it a little bit darker, and then keeping the middle of the paper very light. So the left side and the right side, the middle part, incredibly light yellow. So going lighter. And here again, you might want to lighten up your pencil marks because we're then going to take our brown colored pencil and retrace our pencil line. So again, first we do the light application of yellow on top of the paper. And now we're going in and we are retracing, or I should say kind of outlining. And it's a light outline because again, we're also going to go back and make parts of the outline darker. But for now, we'll just retrace everything that is the paper in brown instead of the gray of the pencil. And I'll give everybody a moment or two. The other thing is you might, again, want to do a little bit of erasing of that pencil. But we're also going to be adding a second application of yellow, just like we did with the sand. And we're going to be adding an application of brown shading to the paper. So we're concentrating now on the paper. We'll go back to the sand after we do the paper. I'm just giving everybody a moment. Okay, so now we're going to put down our yellow and pick up our brown. And we're going to start shading and also making a few of the parts on the paper a little darker. So the first shading we're going to do is at the top part here. And we're going to shade a little bit. I'm going to go in really close now so that you can really see what I'm doing. So we're going to shade here. Like this on this side. And then a little bit they kind of look like ears, right? These two little portions. And we'll shade a little bit here and here. And then we're going to make this line a little bit darker with some breaks. We are now going to shade on either side of the rolled up piece of paper. So if you look, I'm going in between the strings and I'm shading up and down. And you can also make the lines a little bit darker in various spots. So here, and you can add a little bit of shading on there too, because the paper is flipping up and the underside of it would be in shadow. So I'll say that again in case you were concentrating on something else. When you shade down this one side, it would be a little darker. And then when you're outlining, you can outline a little bit darker. And then for the parts of the paper that are flipped up, here, here, and even in here, if you want to go ahead and shade just a little bit in here, but it would be a little bit darker on this side and then get lighter as it goes in the middle and then get a little darker again. And that again is because the paper is flipped around and the underside would be in shadow. Now we're going to go on shading down the right side of the paper, the rolled up paper. So again, you go in between the parts that are the string. And you would shade in the underside again of the paper, which is here. And you can make the crinkled part or the ripped part of the paper a little bit darker. And then you can add some shading down one portion of it over here and maybe just a little bit down the other portion. So, you skip any shading and add some more brown shading over here. And we're going to go to the strings. And I'll let everybody get caught up. There's a lot of little micro instructions with this one, but we're getting there. Okay, so now we're going to go in the strings, and basically we want to shade the strings rather lightly. And then we're going to add some darker lines as we trace. So again, on the left here, outline it. And I'm not going real dark like a marker, just a little bit darker than what we have. Now this part that is sort of broken off, we want to kind of make it scraggly, like so. And then we're going to add a little bit darker shading right underneath this section right here, because the string is on top of the other one and it would be creating a shadow. And then the final string, we're going to make it darker, tracing around the bottom, because again, there would be a shadow. And we're going to make it a really dark section right here as it's wrapping around the paper. And then we make some dark shading on this side. Now we're going to use our brown a lot. Basically now we're going to outline our shell in brown. But before we do that, we're going to lighten up the lines, the pencil lines with this one. And we're going to, retrace them in brown. So this is the shell. And here again, these are initial lines, and then we're going to add more lines and shading to it. And so we're going to shade brown on the bottom part, kind of going across each of the round sections, but staying on the bottom. And then we're going to do the same thing at the top, very lightly shade on either side of the curved section, but so leaving the middle alone for now. And then we're going to shade darker right at the top portion of the shell right here. Sort of the round part. And then we're going to make other lines on the shell, kind of like, I think they're called striations. So I'm just going to show that up close. So they, one or two other lines inside each of the sections. And we're going to put our brown pencil down for a second and grab our orange. And we're just going to very kind of add a little bit of color using our orange to that shell. I like to go lighter for the entire portion of it, and then in each individual section, make the orange darker, much like we did with the brown on the underside and the overside. And then I kind of add some orange stripes in it as well. And then we're going to pick up our brown colored pencil. And we're going to start shading into the parts that are darker. And we're going to add a little bit of slightly darker shading. But let's start off with the darker parts. So we're going to come here inside this section, and right where the bottle is here, we're going to shade a little bit darker in the back where the sand is. So a little bit darker here in the corner of the bottle, and then it gets a little bit lighter as we shade here in the back. We're going to extend that shading in this section and make the line a little darker, but then we're going to do like a gradient. It's going to get a little bit lighter. As we're shading here in the back. We're going to stick to this area as far as shading. So going inside the bottle and shading right underneath the rolled up piece of paper on the sand area. We go a little bit darker here. And a little bit here. There's our bottle. We're going to break through with our shading and continue it on the sand. Then we're going to start going right up against our shell using our brown shading. And that's going to bring us to the sand on the other side of the shell where we sort of outline a bit in brown, meaning we outline the shell on the sand section. So here I am using my brown pencil to kind of outline the curves of the shell. And we're going to outline the curves of the sand in brown. So you can see me doing that. And then we're going to add shading on those areas closest to the shell and right underneath the bottle. We're going to get a little bit darker until it gets to this part here where the bottle is stuck in the sand, and you can make that line really dark, that squiggly line really dark. And then you're going to shade a bit darker right where the bottle is hitting the sand here. And basically, the rest of the sand, you're going to lightly shade on top of it until you get to each of these sections in the sand. And then you're going to add just a little bit of kind of a sprinkling of shading. And it should always be a little bit darker where the lines are, the indents, I should say, more the indent, the indented portion of the sand. And then here's another one, this line here. So we're going to add a little bit of shading here because it's starting to kind of bump up a little bit. And there would be some shading here. Anywhere you see or anywhere you want there to be an indent in the sand, you would make that line a little darker, and then you would follow it with some shading. Okay, we're going to make it a little bit darker inside the bottle here. Right where this is still your bottle line. We have to come back to that. But we're about now to go inside the second half of our bottle. And we're going to now shade the bottom half in brown. But it's not very dark yet. We're going to go back later on as we finish up the bottle. And we're almost finished with this. It's surprisingly not as, I don't think it's as hard as it looks. But you'll have to tell me when we're finished. So we're still continuing with our brown shading here. We shaded a bit of the bottom portion of the bottle. And now we're going to shade this part in the sand. We're going to make that a little bit darker than inside the bottle for now. Here's where the bottle ends. So you can do a little bit of a shaded outline almost using your brown. And then around the bottle, you're going to shade using your brown on top of the yellow. We're still going to go back and add a little more yellow, but we're adding the shading first. And then we have this final sand portion to shade. And that's going to start off first with making kind of like sort of a divot, right, in the sand. So it's almost like a hole in the sand. And so it would be a little bit darker shaded here in the curved part and then shaded lighter to the left of it. So see that darker here, lighter here. And now we're going to add some other shaded parts to make it look more three-dimensional. So we're going to come over here and we're going to shade in a curved fashion. You can see that I'm kind of curving my pencil. The reason we're doing that is we're making it look more like a hill, like a small hill of sand. And then we're also going to go darker right underneath the bottle here on the sand. And then I just added another portion here just by using shading, a little bit darker. This is another mound of sand. And then I want you to grab your yellow. And we're going to make the parts that are dark or brown, we're going to go over those with yellow. Dark the way that the shadows are. So again, take your yellow, golden yellow, and in all the sections where the shading is a little darker, you're also going to shade with your yellow a little darker. And then you're going to go inside and shade the rest of the bottom portion of the bottle with the yellow, just a little bit light yellow. We're going to pick up our brown again, but this time we're going to go into the cork. And so what we're going to do is we're going to outline the cork using our brown. And the top part, we're going to make a little bit bumpy because cork is like that. So again, outlining the cork with our brown and making the top part of the cork bumpy. And we're going to shade the bottom portion of the cork where it's more of the oval. We're going to shade it light, but then a little darker on either side of the corners so that it's shaded darker here and here, but in the middle, it's a little lighter. And then we're going to go darker up here where the cork, you can see the cork above the bottle, the neck of the bottle. And you can still see it through the bottle, but it will be lighter here, and then it's going to be darker where the neck of the bottle is showing. And then we make the rest of the cork lighter. But we want to make sure to make some of those cork lines kind of like texture. Showing that up close. Okay, so we're going to put our brown down for a second, and we're going to grab our regular blue. And we're going to outline our bottle in regular blue. So going on top of our pencil, you're very carefully outlining the outside of our bottle. We're going to go around the top. So for now, we're doing sort of the entire outside of it. Like so. So this is with blue. And we're just going to keep the pencil on there because that's okay at this point. But we're going to start tracing the lines inside the bottle, which means we first start off at the top with the neck. And then inside, we make two curved lines where the bottle is kind of curving. So this line and this line. We're going to go down to the bottom of the bottle. And remember the bottom of the bottle with the glass lines, we're going to outline those pretty dark using our blue. This is all using regular blue for now. Now, for now, we're going to put down our blue and we're going to pick up our sky blue. This is really the fun part. Oh, you know what? Before we did that, I forgot to mention to add some yellow to the cork. Sorry about that. So you're going to just add kind of a layer of yellow to the cork on top of the brown. We're going to go back later and make it a little bit darker with black, but just some little bit of yellow on top of the brown. That's the cork. And then you're going to pick up your blue. This is your light blue, your sky blue. And we're going to start making shading lines. And so we're going to start here at the bottom and we're going to make a line like this that's kind of curving at the bottom. And we're going to make two curves off of that, two curved shaded parts. So one here and one that's a little smaller like that. These are the shaded parts in the glass. We're also going to shade the bottom portion of the bottle using this sky blue. So this bottom portion, you're going to take your blue and you're going to lightly shade on top of it. And when you do that, you're going to add some blue to the sand right near it because it's reflecting off of it, off of the bottle. And you're going to make each of those lines that we created with the blue, you're going to make them a little bit darker by just taking your sky blue and just kind of briefly going over each of those lines. So we're going to continue with this blue and we're going to go up the left side of our bottle. So we're going to add sort of a line that's going up the bottle and it's going to go right up on the left side of the cork. And we're going to repeat that line for the other side of the bottle. So you can see that this line is not quite next to the last part of the bottle, or the outside of the bottle, I should say, outside. So this here. Now right at the top of the neck part, we're going to add one line like this, shaded line. And then we're going to start adding little strips of shaded lines coming from those original curved lines we created to make it look like glass. So you're going to make sure to be coloring on top of your message in the bottle, right? Because the blue glass would be, it's encased in the glass, it's inside the glass. So these lines, these blue lines that we're making for the glass, you're going to make on top of your paper. And as you're getting towards the right hand side here of your glass bottle, you can start to do some shading, harder shading with your sky blue. But you can see that I'm kind of creating spots inside the glass that are shaded, but I don't shade the whole thing. I mean, you can do a light shading using this sky blue. On top of almost everything, including the bottleneck. And you're going to get a little bit darker right at the edge of the right side of the bottle. This is using your sky blue. We have two last parts to do. When you're ready, you're going to pick up your dark blue. And you're going to shade your bottle toward the left bottom side. To make it a little bit darker blue. The bottom portion of the bottle. And I like to add some darker shading up here at the neck with a line to the left of where, right underneath where the cork is. So this line here. And I like to follow that in the curve here with a little bit of shading with this blue. This again is the regular blue. It looks dark. And then we add a little shaded part going into the neck of the bottle here and here. And you can go right on top of your cork. And you can repeat that for the other side using your dark blue by adding another shaded line on the glass like this. And then again, it would be a little bit darker here on the right side of the bottle, especially as you get toward the bottom, right? As it's kind of cornering around here. Now our last part is outlining the bottle in black on top of the blue. Now here again, you don't have to go real dark. I like to go darker in some spots, like where the bottleneck is and meeting up with the portion that's going around the cork here. And at the top, we can add some shading to the left side of the cork, remembering to go through the shading with the glass and then a little bit on the left side of the cork on the left. So again, this is with our blue, or I'm sorry, our black. Our black. We're just adding some finishing shaded touches. The black is really used for parts that are, you want it to be a little darker. So we do outlining as our final outline. And then in the bottom portion of the bottle, I like to make that darker. So these curved lines around here and the ones coming up from the bottom. And then you can even shade a little bit of black on top of that. And I like to add a little bit of black shading in the corner here, the bottom of the bottle. I'm really excited to see what these look like. So I'm going to stop my recording, and then if you would like to unmute and show your work, we can do that. So I'm going to stop the recording now. If I can find, there we go. It changed on me.